What's up everybody, this is Master Ian Gamer. New heroes are easily one of the most anticipated aspects of Overwatch 2, and while I love seeing all the community speculation about which known character might end up making it onto the Overwatch 2 hero roster, I've also noticed that there often tends to be quite a bit of confusion and misunderstanding, particularly surrounding what information on new heroes is confirmed, as opposed to just purely speculation and fanfare from the community. So in today's video, I wanted to cover all the definitive concrete information we actually have regarding the new heroes in Overwatch 2, which includes the amount of new heroes we can expect to see added in the sequel, as well as which specific characters have been indicated to be upcoming new heroes. So without wasting any more time, here's everything we actually know regarding the new heroes of Overwatch 2. First off, Blizzard has indicated that we'll be getting at least 4 new heroes with the release of Overwatch 2. The first of these heroes has been officially confirmed as being Sojourn, a railgun-wielding damage hero. The second is strongly indicated as being the Kanezaka Fox Girl, but this has not been officially confirmed as of yet by Blizzard. The third hero is strongly indicated to be the Junker Queen, but once again has not been officially confirmed yet by Blizzard. And the fourth is very likely to be the Null Sector Omnic we saw at the end of the Storm Rising Archives mission, but once again, this has not been officially confirmed and is by far the least certain of these 4 heroes I just listed. Now, the information I just presented here is unfortunately all the concrete information we actually have. I'll admit it's not a lot, but hey, it's better than having no information, which admittedly is par for the course when it comes to Blizzard and these sort of things. And while I'm sure many of you are already eager to scurry down to the comments section to try to correct me on something you heard the other day about getting X number of heroes or this specific character being confirmed, I will now take the time to delve into each of these 5 separate points and explain why all this concrete evidence I just mentioned is in fact concrete evidence. I think this is an important thing to address since I often see a lot of people sort of confused about how I came to certain conclusions about what's concrete versus purely speculation. So let's delve into the details, but real quick first, I'd like to remind you to subscribe and hit that bell icon to never miss out on any future Overwatch and Overwatch 2 news and content. So first up, the 4 new heroes. Where does this particular number come from? The indication of there being at least 4 new heroes added with Overwatch 2 comes from a Game Informer article that was published back at BlizzCon 2019. In this article, a journalist recounted a closed-door meeting they had with Blizzard prior to BlizzCon 2019, where he was shown a presentation by the Overwatch developers that featured new content coming with Overwatch 2. One of the slides in this presentation showed off 4 silhouettes, which were indicated as representing new heroes that would be added with Overwatch 2. In the article, it was also emphasized that none of these 4 silhouettes immediately stood out as recognizable characters from past Overwatch comics, cinematics, and other forms of media, and that 3 of them appeared to be female, with the 4th one appearing male. Now, initially when this article came out, there was a degree of skepticism surrounding it, given that no other gaming news outlet had reported on these same 4 silhouettes. However, the legitimacy of this article and its description of the silhouettes was seemingly vindicated more than a year later once we started to get the first official teasers for the Kanezaka Fox Girl. And speaking of which, let's move on to talk about her next, given that she has a lot of connections specifically to this Game Informer article. As I mentioned, the Kanezaka Fox Girl was first indicated as being a new hero coming to Overwatch 2 in the Game Informer article we got back in late 2019. Specifically, it was described that one of the 4 silhouettes was that of a short-haired girl with a large shuriken-like weapon who had some kind of fox companion with her. Then, more than a year later, seemingly this exact same character was hinted at by Blizzard themselves with the release of the Kanezaka Deathmatch map. Details in the map itself, in addition to an in-universe letter posted on the official Play Overwatch website, described a girl living in Kanezaka who possessed some sort of affinity with foxes and also wielded an unconventional bladed weapon. This description seems to match up almost perfectly with the silhouette described in the Game Informer article, thus strongly suggesting that both are in fact the exact same character. Furthermore, the way this character is alluded to on both the map itself and via the in-universe letter are extremely reminiscent of how Blizzard used to tease upcoming heroes back in the day when Overwatch was actually getting new heroes. Frequently, we'd see upcoming heroes teased in subtle little map details, sometimes years ahead of when they actually joined the roster, and oftentimes Blizzard would end up releasing relevant story information or other teasers via social media referencing the specific character leading up to their release. Therefore, Blizzard may have not yet officially confirmed that this is a hero we'll be getting, but all the evidence is there pointing towards them being a hero in the future. Now, if you're interested in a more in-depth look specifically at the Kanezaka Fox Girl, then I do strongly recommend you check out a video I did previously where I focused on all the details we know about her and tried to piece together who exactly she is in terms of the Overwatch story, and also what sort of role and abilities she's likely to end up having in-game. There's actually quite a bit of detail to work with here and some very interesting implications when it comes to the greater Overwatch universe, so if you're interested, I strongly recommend you check out that video of mine, which I'll have a link to both in the cards on screen as well as down in the description. Moving on to the next concrete hero though, we have the Junkertown Queen. Now, the Junker Queen is an interesting character because not only has she been a long-time community fan favorite hero candidate, but also the Overwatch devs themselves have pretty frequently teased the idea of her becoming a playable hero over the years.
I wonder if the Queen is ever going to be a hero. What would she be? She's not going to be support, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense.
However, her actually being a playable hero in Overwatch 2 only became concrete after BlizzConline back in early 2021. During one of the clips from this presentation, we can see a room featuring a number of random miscellaneous props and in-game models, most of which are recognizable as either existing characters or props from existing maps. However, one of these props in particular stuck out as being a bit more curious than the rest, as it appeared to be a first-person player model for a not immediately recognizable character. Now, in case you're not familiar with what a first-person player model in a video game is, let me just real quickly explain it. When it comes to rendering things in-game, it only really makes sense to render something that the player themselves will actually be able to see. That's why whenever you clip outside of maps, everything looks really wonky, because there's no reason to put textures or collision boxes on any of this stuff, because while actually playing a match in-game, you're never going to see or interact with it. Well, the same thing applies to player models, specifically when it comes to the first-person player model. When controlling a character in first person, typically the only thing you're going to see of them are their arms and their weapon. There are a couple odd exceptions, like Orisa being able to see her front legs whenever she jumps, but for the most part, all you need for the first-person player model when rendering that character for the player is the arms and weapon. And what we see here are the arms and weapon of some character, thus indicating that this is likely a first-person player model. Now, despite this only being a small portion of the whole actual character, we can actually discern a number of key details from just these arms and weapon. They match up perfectly with images we've seen of the Junker Queen from official sprays and artwork, and while at first the weapon might not be quite recognizable as her iconic axe, the reason it's sort of in this odd position in the ground is because the model itself is in an A pose position. While in an A pose, a character's arms stick out and down at a 45-degree angle, and their weapon often ends up in, well, rather bizarre locations. Sometimes the weapon is stuck in their torso, sometimes it's just awkwardly attached to one of their arms, or in other circumstances, it can even end up stuck in the ground at the player's feet, as we can see in this instance here. So seemingly that's also what's going on here when it comes to the Junker Queen's weapon in this particular player model. If I just go ahead and outline the arms and weapons specifically and compare it to a more recognizable image of the Junker Queen, I think it's pretty clear cut that this is in fact the Queen's arms and weapon, even with their awkward pose and the weapon being stuck halfway in the ground. Now, this is interesting and all, but the most important thing to take note of when it comes to the first-person Junker Queen model we see here is that this model would only exist if the Junker Queen was to become a playable hero. If we'd seen a full body model of the character as you would expect to see from a third-person perspective, then you could argue that potentially the model would just be used as a PvE enemy, perhaps with her appearing as a boss in one of the PvE missions. But the fact that this is specifically a first-person player model for her indicates that the player is likely going to be able to play as her, which of course is literally the definition of her being a playable hero. And therefore, the Junker Queen as a character is essentially confirmed as being a new hero, with the only caveat being that Blizzard has yet to actually publicly officially confirm it. Also, another interesting thing pertaining to the Junker Queen, specifically in reference back to the Game Informer article, is that it's possible the Junker Queen was in fact one of the two nondescript female silhouettes seen by the journalist. Again, it was stated that none of the silhouettes were immediately recognizable as established characters, but given the short window of time during which the journalist was actually able to inspect them, in addition to the fact that they were clearly distracted by the far more visually interesting Fox Girl, I think it's reasonable to at least consider that one of these silhouettes was the Junker Queen, and the journalist merely failed to recognize her during the short window of time he was shown it. We can't say for sure one way or the other whether this was the case, but at the very least it is possible, and thus something we should consider. But moving on now to the third of the concrete new Overwatch 2 heroes, we have the Null Sector Omnic seen at the end of the Storm Rising Archives mission. As I mentioned earlier, this character isn't nearly as confirmed as any of the other three heroes I'm going to be talking about here, but is still very heavily indicated as likely being one of the new heroes coming in the sequel. The reason for this once again stems back from the Game Informer article, where the author mentioned that the one male character in the silhouettes appeared to be wielding a crooked staff and had an overall wizard or warlock-like appearance. Now, looking at this Null Sector Omnic, we don't see any evidence of him possessing some sort of staff in the cinematic itself, but he is certainly wearing a hood, which is an article of clothing often worn by wizards and warlocks. And even beyond just the Storm Rising cinematic, it is worth noting that during BlizzCon 2019, which was the same time this Game Informer article came out, many of the Null Sector PvE enemies shown off in the official Overwatch 2 concept artwork possessed very wizard-like visual designs, with some of them even wielding crooked staves. Therefore, at the very least, I think it's safe to say that the silhouette seen by the Game Informer journalist was in fact some type of Null Sector unit, and given that the only notable Null Sector character when it comes to Overwatch 2 thus far is the Omnic seen at the end of Storm Rising, this character in particular by far has the most chance of being the same hero the journalist saw as a silhouette. Again, this isn't nearly as concrete as characters like the Junker Queen or the Fox Girl, but there's enough concrete evidence here to actually point towards this likely being the case for who this hero is, thus securing them as a very likely candidate for Overwatch 2. Now, having covered the three more enigmatic heroes we can expect in Overwatch 2, I would like to briefly touch on Sojourn as well, since she is, well, one of the concrete heroes we know is going to be coming in Overwatch 2. As the only officially confirmed Overwatch 2 hero, I assume most people are already quite familiar with her, but just to give a very quick recap about her, Sojourn is a character that's been teased for years leading up to the actual announcement of Overwatch 2, and was publicly confirmed to be a new hero in the sequel with that announcement at BlizzCon 2019. Later down the line, Blizzard ended up showing off gameplay of her as a hero in-game, which indicated that she's not only going to be a damage hero, but that she wields some sort of railgun-type weapon. Now, beyond this, much like the Junker Queen, I also think it's worth addressing the idea that Sojourn may have in fact been one of the two nondescript female silhouettes seen by the Game Informer journalist. Again, as I already mentioned, he said that none of the silhouettes stood out as recognizable characters, but an important detail to take note of here is that this closed-door meeting evidently took place in early October, meaning that it happened almost a month before Sojourn was actually revealed at BlizzCon 2019. Therefore, with Sojourn certainly being an established character in the story at that point, but not being super prominent in terms of her visuals or presence as an upcoming hero, once again, I think we have to at least consider the possibility that the journalist merely failed to recognize her silhouette during during this closed-door meeting. The reason I think this is an important detail to bring up is that I've seen a lot of people mention that there's actually 5 heroes confirmed, given that none of the silhouettes appeared to be Sojourn, but then we also had Sojourn confirmed aside from this Game Informer article. And while that certainly could end up being the case, it's entirely possible that Sojourn wasn't one of these 4 silhouettes, we can't rule out the possibility entirely. We have to at least consider that she could have been one of the 4, in which case we'd still be left with 4 new heroes being confirmed as opposed to 5. Keep in mind, on top of that fact, I'm certain we're going to be getting more than 4 heroes in Overwatch 2, especially considering all the delays the game has gone through at this point. But purely in terms of the information Blizzard themselves have indicated through their own official presentations and information, 4 is the number we have to work with at this point for what's going to be coming. Now, originally in this video, I was also going to discuss some of the more common misconceptions I frequently see throughout the community, such as supposed official statements from Blizzard regarding how many new heroes are going to be added in the sequel, or specific characters that people think are already confirmed. But due to how long this video ended up being, I decided to save that portion for its own separate video, which I'll be uploading sometime not long after this video. So if it's out already, there will be a card on screen to it now. If not, then stay tuned. And in the meantime, I recommend you check out some of the dedicated videos I made for the particular heroes I talked about in this video. As I already mentioned, I have a video focusing on the Kanezaka Fox Girl, but I have also done videos talking about the Junker Queen and the Storm Rising Null Sector Omnic, which I certainly think are worth your time as well. So links to all of those will be in the cards on screen as well as down in the description, and I very much recommend checking them out if you're interested. But otherwise, let me know your thoughts on the new heroes coming with Overwatch 2. Are you excited to learn more about any of the 4 heroes I mentioned in this video, or is there maybe a different hero candidate you would like to see as well? As always, thank you so much for watching, and be sure to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, hit up that bell icon, and come join my Discord server to hang out and never miss any of my future Overwatch content. Special thanks to my YouTube channel members who help make these videos possible, and if you'd like to join them to earn some cool rewards, then just hit that join button down below. Otherwise, this is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.